Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First Live.
Fish on First Live, presented by About the Fans. We are back and riding high. I'll just lead off with Brian's comments here. You're telling me there is a chance. There is a teeny tiny chance with this Marlins team. I'm Eli Sussman. Special guest, Danny Enriquez. I know him from the Big League Show, El Big League Show, hosting it with Adrian Lorenzo. And he runs Canes Insight, just like myself. A huge guy, and on pretty short notice hopping on here. So I'm glad that you did. So I'm not riding solo, Danny. Thanks a lot for coming on. I know you're familiar with our stuff, so I appreciate that as well.
No, man, it's a pleasure. To me, vibes are high right now. When you look at playing well without Stowers like we're doing, Sandy, to me, I mean, this was not like a flawless performance, but he's back. He's back to normal. We're not holding our breath every start. Cabrera sounds like he's throwing, right? Doesn't seem like he's off, right? He's going to try to give it a go, and he's up to 97. They said in that last session. Weathers looks good. This farm looks good. I'm feeling great right now. This is where I wanted to be. The Cabrera news kind of threw me off a little bit as far as like, man, all this, we keep him and he gets hurt, but him being healthy, Sandy being back, Weathers being good, and then the team playing well without Kyle Stowers, Agustin Ramirez getting going again. I'm feeling great. Probably as good as I should be feeling considering we're so far under 500, but, you know, I like the vibes.
The vibes are high, and that's the way I would put it.
I had that ready in the soundboard. Queued up perfectly. You didn't even know I had that one.
No, that's how you know it's true.
Yeah, so, let's quickly, I wanted to go back, coming off, of course, this series sweep of the Rockies. I want to go back quickly to the last time the Marlins played the Rockies in Miami. You see the records right there. It was already clear the Rockies were on a historically bad pace, but the Marlins weren't a whole lot better. They got swept in Miami back in June, felt like 14 games under 500. I mean, Danny, was there any place in your mind where you saw this coming? Like the fact that they've been from that point in early June to now, they have a winning record by a pretty healthy margin. Like to go from there, I thought that was rock bottom for the team. I thought that was a point where they kind of declare themselves as being exactly where they were the year before and being totally out of it. So to go from, how surprised are you that they're actually in this position, just considering the way that was looking pretty close to the middle of the season against the same Rockies team and how pathetic that was compared to where they are now?
I mean, you said it was rock bottom because right after that was when the run started. So sometimes you kind of need those. It's just weird how these long seasons play out. I'm thinking of college baseball. You're a UM guy, so University of Miami baseball, kind of similar. At the lowest point of their season is when they really turned it around and went on a run. Ultimately was very close to Omaha. I'd love that kind of postseason result for the Marlins here. But sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. That's when the team comes together and makes a move. And that's, to me, when I think about this series, I don't think of it as negatively because I know what came after it, right? So sometimes, especially with young players, young team, new coach, like it's got to kind of come together. And I think that series, we regret it now because we're not that far away really, but I think this made everything that happened after.
In the comments, one of our super subscribers, that's Sean Millerick there, remembering he's had this bit where predicting what the series outcome from that point forward, just assuming they were going to lose every single series because they were a consistently bad team at that point in the year. They would find some way somehow to drop every single series, no matter who the opponent was. That's been the weird thing about this year, where they have played up. Sometimes they've played up to the quality of the competition, but they've also played down to it as well, where they've had that that loss, of course, to the Rockies. They got swept by the Nationals not that long ago, a few weeks ago, just when it looked like things were going in the right direction. Like a lot of their best wins have come against good teams, and yet the ones that you feel like they should win have slipped away. And that's kind of how you get to this point where on the outside looking in, just in case people want to take a look at this heading into tonight's games, 6 games back of the Mets, but with 9 games to play. Now you look at it and there's still a bunch of teams in between them as well. So a whole lot has to happen. I did the math on this, pulled up based on, I even did the tiebreakers. That's how sick I am. I'm already looking into what happens if they finish tied with some of these other teams. This accounts for the tiebreakers too. And everything that has to happen for this team to sneak in is the Mets need to essentially continue to totally free fall. They need all these other teams to go 500 or worse. And they themselves, the Marlins, have to win 8 of the last 9 to sneak in with 81 wins. What is your feeling just in terms of the fact that the playoff model is in this situation where this team that has been below 500 for almost a whole year, that even in this crazy scenario, they would have to finish at 500 and could still sneak in? You like the fact that a team that, all things considered, this is a pretty mediocre team, right? And the fact that they have a chance to sneak in while still being mediocre. Are you a fan of that, or did you prefer it back when things were just a decade ago, when there was a Marlins team a lot like this in 2016 and 2017 that wasn't really in the conversation because the playoff field was more limited back then? Are you happy that they branched out to an additional wild card just to keep fantasies like this alive for a little longer?
100%. I mean, the season's long. Now, we like the season being long as we get more, right? We want as much as we can get. But to the average fan, I mean, it's a long season, and 162 games in 1955 is different than, I guess, at that point. When did they switch from 154 to 162? Anyways, you probably know better than me. But the length of the season, I think, is more dangerous now, because by the time you get to this part of the calendar, there's so many things going on and everything is hidden, and baseball is really not at the forefront like we'd like it to be. So adding something like this, the Mets are sweating, all these teams are sweating, and still have a chance. And to me, it's a lot better. What was the year, Eli, where we knocked the Mets out there at the end? Was it 2008 or 2009? It was one of those years.
I think it was 08 or 07. I believe it was 07. I remember because of all people, Jeff Conine was on that Mets team, and that was the last year of his career. And he was only like a part-time player on that team. It wasn't like it was all that personal towards him. But I can pull it up right now, fairly certain 2007 at the very, very end of that year, where it seems like it was a similar situation. They were at one point like 7 games up on a wild card spot with 17 to play, and it slips at the very end in that series, and went all the way down to like the very final day of that season to know for sure that they were out. And the Marlins they just blew up. What was Tom Glavine that particular year? I think
we had some good players that year too, if I recall. That was a talented team. Do we have Ugla and a few other, and was Hanley and a few other guys?
Yep, all those guys. And in a situation where that team wasn't all that much worse than this one is now, but that just having one additional wild card kind of changes the calculus. The fact that this year they weren't really big time sellers the way that we thought they would be. The fact that it's a lot of the core players that were here entering the season to give them a chance. And I mean, a lot of this, you've been following this, a lot of this comes down to the injuries as well, holding them back a little bit. The fact that Edward Cabrera, we were talking about him briefly, the fact that he's been out the last few weeks when they're this close, and the bigger one being Kyle Stowers now being gone for over a month now, and it's not looking like he'll be back in time before the end of the year. So it makes you think, what if they had even average injury health or a little bit better than that, then maybe that's the difference between actually being, instead of begging for a whole lot of stuff to go right, actually being in a position where you control your destiny.
And I think the timing too, we have 2 pitchers coming back for Tommy John that are pretty important to the team. Forgetting Edward and what he's dealing with. You had Sandy coming back at the start of the year, and we know what that process was like. Right now, he looks like he could pitch in the playoffs to me. And then Yuri, same thing. I mean, at one point was really rolling, got into some trouble, looked a little better last time. So those guys were coming back. Myers on the way out, Weathers on the way out. It's just kind of, you never really felt like this rotation had an anchor. At least that was my sense, because Eddie for a while had it and then got dinged up, and just glad to have him back. So what's up, Alex? Danny?
Hey,
Nice to meet
Danny.
you, brother.
You as well?
You are right in time, Krutchik. We could actually we always refer to him as Krutchik because we have two Alexes on our staff. So
What's up,
I'm accustomed to it, even when we have a single Alex show. You're right in time, Krutchik, to talk about some Sandy stuff. The fact that finishes off this series by again working into the seventh inning. The fact this is a pretty extended stretch of consistency where just a couple months ago, the reason why he wasn't traded is because he didn't look like a guy that was a surefire upgrade for a playoff team. And now he kind of flipped the switch at that point where it was right before the deadline where he had a couple scoreless starts. But now this consistent, it's the combination of working deep into games and also being pretty effective in those games. So this game in particular, this matchup against the Rockies is on paper pretty easy, but whenever it happens in Coors Field, little mistakes can go a long way. So I guess how are we feeling about how close he is now to his pre-injury form as we get deep into the year? He's had this consistent stretch that obviously was not there for so much of the season.
Yeah, what I was really impressed by today was the fact that it wasn't a great start from wire to wire. I remember having this thought last year with Edward Cabrera where like the starts that he would give up like 1 or 2 walks were actually more impressive to me than the ones where he would give up 0 walks, because Edward was prone to having these starts where once one thing goes wrong, everything else unravels, and that's really been the case for Sandy this year, as well as 2023, really, even pre-Tommy John. And it didn't look good in that second inning. What was it, Eli? It was like 3 straight hitters got on base. Well, I guess one of them was a home run, so yeah. I don't know if that counts as getting on base in this context, but like first 3 guys reached base safely. It looked like it was going to be one of those starts for him, and then he settled down for the rest of the game. And to do that, like you said, not the strongest lineup that he'll ever face, but in Coors, like they're all at least mediocre at Coors. And so to be able to settle down and still have a good start after that second inning when things were not looking well, like that makes me feel very confident.
In the middle of that inning, one thing that really helped him out is they finally caught a runner trying to steal against him. This stat blows my mind that until this moment in the season, not a single runner had been caught stealing, trying to go against Sandy. Part of that is the catching behind him and guys that have not been able to throw out runners, whether it's Liam Hicks or Augustine. But most of it is on Sandy, just being really slow to the plate, not putting pitches in the right position to get guys out. So during that second inning rally, the first out of that inning was a caught stealing behind him. And that something like that makes a big difference. And that's the reason why I've kind of been on the fence about how I feel about him, because this weakness has always been there in his game, and it's been worse than ever this season. And that's part of baseball. Even if it feels like he's been unlucky at times, even if it feels like some big innings have gone away from him, part of that is when you don't control the running game, it eats at you. Yeah. How have you been processing that, Danny, throughout the season? Because I think that's been kind of one trend. The one big weakness for this team all year long is controlling the running game. They've allowed more stolen bases than any Marlins team ever. But yeah, is that something you've noticed over the course of the year? Because
he's texting.
I've been obsessing over it maybe a little bit too much.
He's texting Stallings after his starts. That was such a cool pairing, really a Cy Young pairing. So, I know he misses him. But I was going to ask you, Eli, you're in New York. You don't think the Yankees could have used? I'm glad we kept them. But as I look at this kind of playoff run come to vision here, man, if you were the Yankees and you're looking at the form this guy's in, even with what you're mentioning about the running game, and he's not been perfect, Cy Young caliber, but man, if I'm the Yankees and I had this dude as my third starter, and I didn't have to rely on young players so much, and I could just trust this guy to at least give me a chance to win and potentially dominate, we've seen him do in a playoff series. I don't know, man. You're in tune, I'm sure, with what's going on up there since you're there. I mean, you think that would have been, you think they're regretting not getting a player like this at this point?
I think so, because they were in this situation where the Marlins were obviously listening on him, and there were teams interested in him, but to a certain extent where there were not teams willing to sell their farm to get him. They were ones that wanted to make a deal on their terms, feeling like he could be one of the better starters moved at the deadline. And the fact that you would have him even beyond this year was a big part of that as well. But there's risk involved when you see the rolling ERA. Entering the deadline, it was a 6.36 for the whole season. And as much as you can look at the underlying things trending in the right direction, Like it was just a point where we weren't going to be able to find common ground in terms of what the Marlins thought would if they were going to sell low on him. They were kind of in a position where they would go down with the ship. If he was never going to turn it around, then they would almost prefer that rather than selling low on him and having him bounce back with another team and being haunted by the what if going on with it. And it seems it has worked out pretty well, where going into this offseason, they're going to have, again, a variety of choices and better choices this time around, where if they want to trade him in the offseason, they'll be in a position where the offer should be better, but they'll go through that same calculus in terms of how close we are. Sean brought it up in the chat that if they're going to make the playoffs next year, you probably need Sandy involved in some way or form with that. You have to get really creative if you're going to trade him and then rearrange all these deck chairs and somehow make the team even better. It's going to be such a fascinating decision coming up. And a lot of it also, we've touched on Eddie and how it relates to Edward Cabrera, where he threw this simulated game in Colorado yesterday. We had Isaac Azut there. He went about 50 pitches. His velo, his stuff looked pretty good. But Danny, what it does is it gives
you got an exclusive report on that. That's bad. That's awesome. So you had this, like I'm out here talking about. You had a guy on the ground there. You tell me how what's going on. Or you think we're gonna be able to have him down the stretch, or at least for next year opening day?
What it does is it gives me flashbacks of exactly where Sandy was 2 years ago. When Sandy got hurt towards the end of that 2023 season, initially they diagnose it the exact same way. They call it an elbow sprain, and he wants to try to pitch through it. I remember Sandy just a few days later, he takes the ball and he's like building up in a throwing program again. They even sent him on a rehab assignment almost exactly 2 years to this day. He goes on a rehab assignment. He throws a few scoreless innings against minor leaguers, and then he wakes up the day after that and feels some soreness. And they go to the doctor and they say, man, there's enough damage there that you can't pitch through it. And he undergoes Tommy John. So even though every step of the way with Eddie, it's looking okay. The thing is, most of these scenarios, there's a reason why they put him on the IL in the first place. It's because whenever you feel discomfort right around that UCL, it usually means that there's some sort of damage there. Even if the imaging wasn't totally clear initially what it was, there's still that risk in the back of my mind. So they're in that situation where it's at the very end of the year. He still has an opportunity to, if he wants to, he can go out on a rehab assignment next week, face AAA guys, or it sounded like what Clayton McCullough was saying is they're even considering just bring him straight off the IL into a major league game for a few innings next week at the end of the year and have him make one start. You just don't know until you're throwing at full intensity. He was pretty close to full intensity during the sim game, but he really, there's concern. There's that belief that something is up, and he's going to try to work through it, but it's almost a carbon copy of what Sandy went through 2 years ago, and it gets your hopes up as he's like building up again. Usually the way that this goes is there's just too much gunk, for lack of a better word, in that elbow that it's easier to reset and sit out a year than to come back. So still got your fingers crossed for that, but the next step is going to be next week. So it'll be a question about whether he's going to throw again next week and stretch out to be a starter even more. And it gives them just enough time entering the offseason to decide what to do in terms of whether they feel he's in the clear or whether they feel there's enough mess there that they just need to go under the knife.
Man, now you're killing the vibes. The vibes were high, and now you're bringing them back down. Didn't Luzardo have something similar? I don't know if he threw at the end of the year. Remember, Luzardo was having some elbow trouble, and he ended up not getting surgery, and he was fine. Obviously, got through it. Do you remember that situation? How it might be different?
He had, I think it was even multiple times during his Marlins career that he had some like elbow scares. There was one where he missed a chunk in the middle of, it was just last season. He missed a part in the middle of the year. He came back, and then he had a back issue that kept him out for most of the rest of the year after that. He's been healthy this year with the Phillies and back to his usual form for the most part. So it varies one way or the other. It's just this particular case, man, it totally reminds me of exactly what Sandy went through during sort of the 2023 season, where fingers crossed, you try to build up, and you simply don't know until you feel that, not necessarily a snap, but you feel that soreness. Your elbow is going to tell you when too much is too much, and he something was not right just a few weeks ago. So it's usually that doesn't go away on its own. It's this
All
is
right, we gotta bring back the vibes. We gotta bring back the vibes. Talking about Sandy pitching well. And
so
Weathers, Weathers, I mean, didn't pitch particularly well, but I mean, the arm still works, the body still works, and I mean, he's super talented. I mean, he's not, to me, he's not that far off talent wise from Luzardo, but just maybe not as durable. And Luzardo had injuries too.
Yeah, it was great to have Weathers back just in time before the end of the year. So he should have 2 more starts to go before the end of the season to head into the winter on a high note. And the hopes were so high for him entering the year because he put in a lot of work getting his body right into good shape, and his stuff was as good as ever this year. So I'm not concerned at all about the Rockies' results. Still pretty confident in him moving forward. He becomes, if Eddie does miss some time next year, then that just means that Weathers is an even bigger part of their plans for 2026. So I think there's a whole lot of confidence in him. Yeah. Other than that, from this past few days, Krutchik, anything maybe offensively we want to touch on for them to win these 3 games, especially today? A rare Liam Hicks is one of your guys, and this is the first time in a long time that he's hit a homer off of an actual pitcher, because his most recent one was actually off of a position player pitcher. It's been if the power is there even a little bit, then he's going to be a significant piece of this team moving forward. He's a really well-rounded player. Otherwise, it's just about that one element to his game, and he flashed it a little bit in this final game.
Now, I don't know if this is the way that you should look at things, but the way that I look at it is through the lens of the catchers that have come through Miami since JT Realmuto left, or was traded away rather, which is, at this point, I don't really care what kind of hits you're getting. If you're getting hits or getting on base at any rate in any sort of way as a catcher on the Marlins, like I'm happy. Now, obviously, if you can find an improvement over the offseason, then go for it. But I wouldn't really be forcing it. He doesn't strike out. He walks a lot. He gets a lot of productive outs, and then, he'll get a single for you once every other game. The scouting report on him was always that he didn't have a lot of power, so it doesn't really concern me that he only has 3 home runs against regular pitchers at sea level this year. I think I just have, unfortunately, low expectations for catchers on the Marlins. He's fine as a catcher. He can't really throw out runners, but it seems like no one on the in that position group can. He doesn't hit home runs, but that's fine. He gets hits. And at this point, I don't really care how you get hits as a catcher.
I guess we'll call this the Marlins golf cart report. So the press box report. That seems to be where Isaac is right now. Tell us how it was covering 2.5 games at Coors Field. I know in our private chat you've been totally over the moon about the experience.
Yeah, so we're on our way back from the golf course back to downtown Denver. We spent 2.5 days covering the Marlins at Coors Field. Start with the experience. Coors Field press box, incredible. The baseball experience at Coors Field, it feels like you're there watching baseball rather than at some concert, like it feels like at Lone Depot Park at times. The people, the staff are incredibly nice. They're helpful whether you're trying to figure out where to go and how to get to where you're trying to go. And then, the main part of it was that the visiting clubhouse at Coors Field is by far the biggest visiting clubhouse that I've seen. I've covered a good amount of road games for the Marlins. Apparently, according to sources, the Texas Rangers' new visiting clubhouse at their new ballpark in Arlington is the only one that's bigger than the one at Coors Field, but it was an incredible time. We had a couple of big wins with Ryan Weathers on the mound yesterday, where the rookies sort of helped fuel the offense, even though Ryan Weathers couldn't go too deep. And then the series opener with Yuri Perez pitching, unfortunately, the best baseball of his second half. It's cut short due to some rain. We dealt with some rain delays yesterday as well before first pitch, a 40-minute delay before first pitch, and a 1 hour and 1 minute rain delay after the 5th inning in Game 1 on Tuesday. But all in all, an incredible experience in Denver.
Hey, Isaac, I was out there. I'm Danny, by the way. Nice to meet you, man. I've been reading your stuff for a while. I was out there in Colorado with my family, myself. Went to Coors, saw the big they had the big painting of the Blake Street Bombers there. on the side with Galarraga, Dante
Yeah.
Bichette, a little before your time, but that was like the hot things. Because we kind of came up together here as franchises. But you got to check out the Buffalo. There's a Buffalo Preserve by the airport. So if you're like a little early to your flight, there's like a big field with buffalo right by the airport. Sorry for hijacking the Marlins discussion, but make sure you check out the Buffalo before you get out there. But yeah, it was awesome. It was a little earlier in the year, so they weren't as down in the dumps. They still were one of the worst teams, on pace to be one of the worst teams in history, but it wasn't as advanced in the season. And it was like they had like 25,000-30,000 on a Tuesday day game. Against the Cardinals, who were not any great shakes at that time. So yeah, it's a pretty cool experience and definitely a different vibe.
When you're in Colorado, Isaac, do you hit from the farthest back tee, or are you still at the front?
Well, one thing at a time. You have my girlfriend really excited. She's driving today. We're gonna have to check that out. Thank you very much, Danny. And then Project, we were playing from the back tees. Thank you very much. We were able to get over 15-20% more distance on our tee shots today due to the altitude, obviously. It was a great time out there. Thank you for asking.
For people that are curious about the attendance numbers for this Rockies series, all three games announced attendance in the low 20,000s, which by Marlins standards, that'd be about a top 10 number at Lone Depot Park all season long. And so that's just, I've seen examples throughout this year that have been crazy. I know even deep into the summer, they've had a couple borderline sellouts for this Rockies team. That just speaks to how much interest there is and how much people enjoy going to that particular ballpark, regardless of the results, especially if there's a lot of transplants for the visiting team. Probably not a lot of Miami transplants in Denver in that particular case.
There were a decent amount of guys in Marlins jerseys, to be honest, more than I thought. I know some season ticket holders made the trip and were sitting above the dugout at Coors Field over the third base dugout. And it's funny because I did ask Clayton, I wanted to ask him during the pregame scrum, but I didn't want to put him on the spot. But I did ask him, why do you think the Rockies, despite a historically bad record and really inconsistent weather here in September, how they're able to still, in the middle of the week against another bad National League team, are able to draw 20, 25, close to 30,000 fans a day? It's just it's a different sports town. It's a different city. They depend on their sports here in Denver, it feels like, and they just make it feel like a baseball experience. There's no in-game hosts, and I think that's something that a lot of fans they appreciate that, and they just love their team a little bit more. And hopefully, there's some things that they can take from this and take from their entire season and maybe implement them at Lone Depot Park, because 25,000, like Eli said, would be top 10 at home.
Right before you came on, we touched briefly on Eddie and his attempt to come back from this elbow situation. I kind of gave my thoughts on it, my pessimism on it, comparing it to Sandy a couple of years ago. But from being there, how are you feeling about the possibility that he may have dodged a bullet with this? As Clayton even alluded to, the possibility that he might pitch in a game next week, like a big league game to finish this off. Where do we stand with Eddie as he's trying to overcome this elbow sprain issue? I think Isaac may have frozen on us at an inopportune time.
With the scoop on the edge of my seat. We got that's amazing. You got a guy on the ground for that. That's pretty cool for you guys. Fish on first, man. You got people on the ground getting real life injury updates, not just relying on everybody else. Shout out to you guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's in all likelihood that's going to be our final road series coverage of the season. The rest of the path for the Marlins is 2 more in 3 games in Texas and then 3 in Philly coming up next week. But barring any surprises, that'll be it.
Might be inconsistent. We have some pretty bad service. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, got you just well enough.
Wait, it might go down really quick, but on Cabrera, he's going to pitch again this year. I don't know if they dodged a bullet, because what's going on in his elbow is accurate. He's going to try and pitch through it. The example I continue hearing is Jesus Luzardo doing what he's doing for Philadelphia, despite what's going on with his elbow. Cabrera's going to try and pitch through it. Surgery has been and still is on the table, but he did throw a simulated game on Wednesday at Coors Field. 3 innings, 50 pitches. At this point in the season, there's not going to be any time for a rehab assignment, obviously. So the next time he does take a mound in a professional capacity, it'll be for the Marlins. So it felt like Clayton was cautiously optimistic that Cabrera could make one more start before the season ends. You could make the argument, what's he doing? Just undergo the surgery. But I think if you're him and you're looking at Sandy and his uneven first half coming off surgery, you're looking at Yuri Perez and his unevenness in the second half coming off surgery, you can understand why maybe Edward Cabrera personally is uneasy about going under the knife with a surgery in his right arm, coming off the best year of his career by far. But that's where it stands right now. The next step is for maybe 5 ups, 65, 75 pitches, and then you could see him hypothetically pitch in a major league game before the season's over. The Marlins seem optimistic.
Do you have a feeling that maybe also part of his wanting to pitch through it has to do with the fact that we're towards the end of the season, and so he only needs like a couple more ups on the mound, and then he's got 5 months off?
You would think, but if there's any thought process there, that wouldn't make much sense, because whether you have 5 months off or that does definitely have a factor. But once you report in January and February, you start throwing again, you're going to feel discomfort. If you're Cabrera, it's sure as shoot. It happened every few months here this season. It's happened. He's felt some discomfort almost every year of his professional career. And if with him, let's say he had undergone surgery in September, he is 100% back for the 2027 spring training, and he's going to be making his arbitration eligible money next year, $5 million for not pitching a single inning. So if I were him, I probably would have undergone it, but it's easy for me to say. Nobody depends on my right arm. But yeah, I think that where we are in the season, September, probably does have something to do with him saying, hey, let's just try and get to the end, and who knows what happens.
Right. Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if this is one of those injuries where like he just needs some rest for a while and hopefully that clears it up, or if the arm just is what it is at this point until he gets surgery.
Some people can pitch through it, some people can't. If anyone tells you that they know what's going on with a pitcher's elbow, they're full of shit. So every guy reacts differently, and we'll never know how Cabrera will or would have react depending on what he does. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. I was told a few weeks ago that it was a foregone conclusion he'd be missing all of 2026. That could still happen. It's very feasible that he pitches and he gets hurt again and he feels discomfort again. He complains of any sort of pain, and then he will undergo surgery. But if he doesn't feel any pain, maybe it's closer to a Jesus Luzardo situation where he's able to pitch through it.
I will say for now, sorry, Eli. For now, it seems like the times that he has gone up, it sounds like his StatCast numbers are still similar, and so far he's been waking up with no discomfort. At least that's the information that they're relaying to us. So I mean, so far it seems like he's been able to pitch through it with no decrease in performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's gotten a little bit. The last IL stint when he was playing, it was a little bit more pain than when the last time he went on the IL. But you're right. He was throwing 97 at Coors Field yesterday, so that's a good sign. The spin was there, the break was there, everything was there. He felt fine coming off it. So we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
Isaac referenced it, and to answer Sean Miller's question in the chat, yeah, he's getting paid next year regardless of whether he's healthy or not. It's not guaranteed. It is an arbitration salary where the team could cut him and lose him for absolutely nothing, but they would not do that. That'd be malpractice. So the team will either bite its tongue and pay him to rehab in 2026, and it should be, as you referenced, around that $5 million figure, a pretty significant raise because of how well he's pitched this year and how durable he's been. For anybody that's not aware of this, I was the last reporter that spoke to him when he made his most recent major league start. And my question to him was how it is that he's been able to stay so healthy this year when he was unable to do so in previous years. And he kind of laughed it off, and he seemed pretty – he didn't seem like he was hiding anything in that moment, but it turns out the very next day is when he told the team that something was up and he couldn't keep going. And I have my fingers crossed that he actually dodged a bullet here and is able to have a relatively normal 2026 season, and that my ill-timed question did not push him in the wrong direction one way or the other.
It's like when a reporter asks a closing pitcher, like, "Hey, you've been nails lately. Like, can you talk about that a little bit?" And then he goes and gives off a bomb the next day. It's kind of like that.
We're due for some luck on these because I could have sworn when we traded Luzardo and when we traded Pablo Lopez, which that was consistent shoulder issues, which was even scarier, especially after Henderson Alvarez, another Venezuelan that we had. I remember like, all right, well, let them deal with that risk, right? I mean, you're sad to see him go, but you're like, from a just cold logical perspective, you're like, all right, well, they're going to deal with this problem. And these guys have been horses. I mean, they had some injuries, but they've been extremely productive for the teams that acquired them. So it's like we kept Cabrera, could have done that same thing. And now we're dealing with this. So you hope the luck kind of goes on our side for this one.
And we referenced it with Sandy. It was a similar situation with Cabrera at the deadline where teams were interested. The Marlins were willing to move him for a certain price, but they just were not anywhere close to actually coming on the same page in terms of what an appropriate value is for somebody with his extensive injury history, who just had not been performing that well, even as recently as last season. As well as things were going right now, there was that lingering injury concern in the back of your mind. In Cabrera's case, there was the question that you've lived through it as well, where he just has had a lot of trouble throwing strikes in the past prior to this year, where they winded up in the same situation, just sticking with him and standing pat and hoping that teams would value him more highly in the offseason and trusting that he would be able to keep this up. And unfortunately, it hasn't gone in the same direction as the Sandy one, where Sandy is finishing on a very high note, whereas with Eddie, at this moment, you're just holding your breath that he's it's not quite as bad as we feared it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we're gonna see it. I know that the Marlins, they weren't able to come to an agreement on a trade with Cabrera this trade deadline. They did have pretty much foregone conclusion plans to make a deal this offseason with Cabrera. So this money that they would have to pay him for him to not pitch if he does elect to undergo surgery would have significant consequences on their payroll flexibility for next season, because that would be $5 million that's lost for them. We know this team is not flushed with cash. So yeah, that this is gonna. I guess the Marlins are hoping that he can pitch through it. Obviously they are, but it's gonna have a lot of ramifications if he's not able to.
We'll send you on your way, Isaac, to enjoy your final few hours in Colorado.
Check out the Buffalo by the airport. Promise you.
Buffalo, all right,
Miami. They're right there.
All right, we will try. We have to return this rental car on Turo tomorrow morning before a 1 p.m. flight. So we will try to take a look at this buffalo that you speak of. She's very excited.
Buffalo's plural. It's a herd.
All right, Miami. We'll see you guys there. Peace out.
Buffalo does sound cool.
Yeah, we had extra time, and there was just a giant field of grass that's like, you've been by airports. Sometimes there's just random space that they haven't done anything with. It's nothing beautiful, but they just stuck a bunch of buffalo there, and they just roam that whole piece of land right in the city, right next to the airport. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, this in Florida, like we all freak out if we see a deer. Like that's our wildlife.
Well,
if that.
You totally moved me off topic. I almost ran into a deer last night when I was driving in New York. All of a sudden, like a whole family of them crossing the street, coming out of a cemetery of all places as I was trotting by. You usually don't see them in the summer. That just shows that the seasons are changing a little bit, because in the fall they kind of take over, and all of a sudden, bam, that was pretty close to a bad situation.
They'll ruin your car too, right?
Oh yeah,
Depending on the size of it.
They leave. Yeah, that's a mess. Thankfully, I've not personally been through that situation, but I've had family members that have actually had collisions with deer, and it is not forgiving itself on the vehicle. To transition from that, I did want to cover one non-Marlins topic on here, because earlier today we got the announcement that Clayton Kershaw retiring. This is on a pretty short list of guys that, of no doubt, Hall of Famers that now I can remember from the very start of their careers to the very end. I remember Kershaw coming up as this hotshot prospect with a Dodgers team that was pretty mediocre at the time back in 2008. And he ends up being the lone constant for them through this crazy run of dominance, being not only in the playoffs every year, but winning their division almost every single year. winning 2 World Series, and before that, being in the middle of them blowing a lot of potential World Series runs. So there's that little complication in his legacy where his postseason performance has been shaky. People really didn't have any expectations of him entering this year at this stage because of all the injuries he's been through, the fact that the quality of his stuff has understandably gone down through the years. But when he's been on the mound this season, he's actually been really effective for them. And he's somebody that's probably going to be part of their postseason plans and any chance that they have of actually repeating as champs. So anything that comes to mind to you, Danny, when you think about Kershaw, and not just his times pitching against the Marlins, obviously, but just this crazy career that he's had all with one team too. That's the kind of unique wrinkle as well, start to finish, with the team that drafted him like 20 years ago.
Let me pull this up here because this blew my mind. This is from Jason Stark. He said, look at this, 2,000 plus innings pitched, live ball era, first in ERA plus, tied with Pedro Martinez, whip first. I mean, and he's, like you said, he's still pitching great. That Dodgers rotation is kind of rounding into form at the right time, which for them, I mean, they knew they were going to go to the playoffs, so it's a matter of getting hot at this time. So you look at that rotation with Kershaw playing a big part of it. You got Ohtani rolling now. Yamamoto's been outstanding. So that's a pretty cool rotation. I mean, if you hate the Dodgers, it's not a very good sign that they're getting into form, but they could be better than last year. And you hope that he gets that opportunity. Oh, look at you, man. Great job pulling that. You hope that he gets an opportunity to have another moment here, I think, during this run. I'm not a Dodgers fan particularly, but it would be cool to see him, given that he can still go, have one of those games or one of those moments where you really see him on the biggest stage before he goes, especially now that he's retiring for sure, because I mean, those numbers are absolutely insane and no real asterisk that I could think of.
I do really wish that our staffer, Luis Adiowais, was on here, because even though he does cover the Marlins mostly, like, this is by far his single favorite athlete of all time in any sport, in any capacity. So we've been inundated with stats like this from Lewis through the years, even when Kershaw was still playing along. And now this coming into his final year, he's got one more start remaining at Dodger Stadium during the regular season, and then probably one additional start at the very end of the season on the road after that. Then we'll see what they do in the playoffs, because it's easy to forget, but this Dodgers team entering the season, there was a lot of outrage about how they had totally broken the system, that they had gone so far and beyond it with their spending and with their talent acquisition that other teams would not be able to compete. And now they're in a situation where they have the third best record in the National League, where they're going to make the playoffs, but they are going to have to go through every single round of it. They're not going to have any shortcuts along the way. And as much talent as they have overall, it's they're not even a clear favorite necessarily to come out of the National League going into it. As we'll see the way that the Phillies have performed for a lot this year and the way that the Brewers have performed for basically this entire season. It's an interesting wrinkle to it, where if they are going to make it all the way, despite what the preseason narrative was around them, it's not a layup by any means for them to actually get deep into October. They're going to need even guys like Kershaw on his very last legs, to still have something left in the tank to get over the top.
I wouldn't want to play him. I mean, to me, everything you said is true. But look at this. So here we go. This is the tweet I was looking for. Sorry for my rudimentary screen sharing. You're doing this like a pro, cutting out the picture. But I mean, look at this. Since August 1st, I mean, look at these names. First of all, knowing who the people are, and then look at the performance since August 1st. I know it's not a huge sample size, but I don't know, man. Seeing some of these guys in the postseason, on top of the fact that you have the stars of the world. Oh, did I kick everybody out? Oh, there you are. And knowing you also have Ohtani at the plate, Freeman, and all these guys. I mean, I don't know. This to me is still the best team in baseball. I know the record doesn't show it, but given the way the rotation is coming together at this time and what just their overall talent level is, just forget the bats, the arms. I could see them really being tough to beat if these guys stay on their current trajectory.
Yeah, and you also can't, and you kind of alluded to this, but you also can't ignore the pedigree. Like, once you get into the playoffs in almost any sport, it definitely matters who's been here and who hasn't been here. And there are just certain teams, certain groups of guys that you just trust, once they get in there. This is largely the same lineup and largely the same pitching staff for the most part that won the World Series last year. And, is it unfair to the Brewers to say this? Probably a little bit, but if it comes down to the Dodgers versus the Brewers in the LCS, like I'm going with the Dodgers just because I've seen them do it, and they've been there before. They just know how to win, and I think that knowing how to win, the pendulum for me has kind of swung back and forth on this. Where at first I thought knowing how to win was like a cliche, but like the more a lot of this comes from the hockey that I watch, honestly. But
I was going to say that sounded like a Panthers thing.
Yes,
that you
but
were
it
applying.
leaks into other sports where some teams just they do have it. They just know how to win. And until I see the Brewers come out of nowhere and actually do something in the playoffs, I'm going to continue thinking that.
There's horsepower too to it. I think, it's what the level goes up, as we've seen, right? And when you have that ability to really just crank it up from a raw talent perspective, I think that makes a difference. Obviously the Brewers got some extremely talented arms, some talented players, but the horsepower that these guys bring to the table, both at the plate and, on the mound. And I mean, we'll see Ohtani, and I now feel that could be like a viral situation if something goes in that direction. But I don't know, man. I'm with you. If the Brewers, great team, great season. They do have some really talented guys, but when it gets rough and you're going to a whole nother level of both experience and just underlying talent, I think the Dodgers have a different gear if they can get to it.
Definitely. I mean, it was also something that we kind of saw in like 2023 on a lesser scale, where like the Marlins didn't have the most talent, but they were pretty good, and they were also good against the Phillies during the regular season for that season and the couple seasons before that. But then you get to the playoffs, it's just a totally different thing, totally different atmosphere. But also, you were going up against a team that had been there before and just knew how to do it.
And stars that very quickly reminded you, hey, this is not August. This is something different. And you could feel. I mean, you remember watching that series, the atmosphere for sure, and then just like seeing some of their stars come to the plate, you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is different. At least that's how I felt watching that series.
I still think about how close, if they just somehow, some way, like fluked their way into the next round of that series. I so badly wanted to see what playoff baseball looks like in Miami after not being at this new ballpark at any other point. And they had to get out of that round, unfortunately. The way that it's set up is, the Phillies were hosting all three games of that series, even if it made it to a third game. And I still think a whole lot about that because Isaac was on the scene covering that as well a couple of years ago. We had two reporters on the scene for that, and all they were kind of pretty deflating to be there and go all that way only to see the Marlins score maybe one run in both of those games combined. Right. It was kind of a letdown in terms of,
and no Sandy and no Yuri, right? So we were going, and Arias was banged up. So like we didn't have because when you talk about having the underlying talent and the big guns and experience in Sandy's case, not having those guys to go against the guys that we were going against, it's like we were just so undermanned, and you could feel the difference. But it's gonna be awesome playoffs. I mean, hopefully we get part of it here and pull the run of the century. You showed the formulas how it can happen, but there it is right there. At a minimum, I'd love to knock the Mets out. That's what I'd say. At a minimum, get the Mets out of there.
Is this Eli's the only person that I think would know this off the top of his head? Is this the first time the Marlins have closed out a season against the Mets since 2007, 2008? Because I don't
off the top of my head, I can't guarantee it. I think I feel like I think 2007 and 2008, didn't the Marlins close out Shea Stadium as well? Yeah. So
and the Mets opted to do a post-game celebration to close out the stadium instead of a pre-game celebration. So right after the Marlins stuck a sword into the Mets' collapse that year, they had to go and celebrate the end of Shea Stadium.
Right. So
hilarious.
Without being able to 100% verify it, I'm pretty sure this is the last time that it has at the very end of the season since that point. And to me, I continue to realistically, what you're hoping for is that the Mets, that they end up spoiling the Mets' chances versus one of these other teams. The likelihood of the Marlins themselves being the next team up to take advantage of that it's so far-fetched. You need all these other teams to be average, if not worse, down the stretch. And you need this to be the best stretch of Marlins baseball ever, to have like a 2-week stretch that they've never had before, where they've won, for them to win 11 of their final 12 games, and all these other teams who kind of scuffle at the same time. So I laid it out for people. I didn't even have my imagination doesn't go far enough to imagine an undefeated finish to the season, because this team has never had a win streak anywhere close to long enough. I have to actually, pencil in one loss at some point over these last 9 games at a very minimum, just because we haven't seen anything before quite like this. We've seen the Mets collapse, but not quite like this. And at least if they are going to collapse, more likely it's going to be to the benefit of one of these other teams that are in between the Mets and the Marlins.
The Rockies won like 15 of their last 16 in 2007, 2008.
That's right.
When so it's happened before. I don't expect them to do it. I just want to be very clear. I don't expect the Marlins to do it. The only thing that gives me the slightest bit of hope is you don't actually have to make up all this ground on the Mets. You only have to gain 3 games over the next week, because then you control your own destiny. If the Mets come into town, you are 3 back.
Now, I want to bring this up from Sean, because people will remember this promotion pretty clearly, that towards the end of, it must have been 2022, that the Marlins were marketing to fans by saying they're marketing to the opposing fans towards the end of that season. This was 2022, and I think they actually finished that year. I will double check right now. It was a homestand against the Braves and the Mets, and I feel like the Braves were the ones at the tail end of that. If I could just double check. Yes. Let's see. That's right. It was the season ended against the Braves, but they were advertising the game to Mets fans, so that Mets fans would come to watch the Braves like screw up towards the end of the year against the Marlins. It was very unpopular and distasteful and desperate. Desperate is kind of the main word around it, is that they were marketing to Mets fans because the Marlins are playing against the Braves. They wanted people in the ballpark that were fans of the Mets to come and align themselves with the Marlins fans and hope for the Braves to lose, because the Braves were on the cusp of clinching the division that year.
I really respected that. They took a swing on it. When you work in marketing, you got to take a swing on things. Like, I thought the Steve Bartman appreciation weekend was very distasteful. I think calling all Mets fans is hilarious. And yeah, it obviously missed the mark, but like, you got to take a risk sometimes.
Very, very quickly, we should just touch on this upcoming games the Marlins have to play and have to win this weekend against the Rangers. There's a look at the next 3 starters. It's the same rotation that they've had the past couple of weeks. Jansen Junk, Adam Mazer, and Yuri Perez coming up at Texas. And the Rangers rotation not fully set at this time. They're in a desperate situation as well. Well, they're in one where at least they felt more realistic about their chances of getting into the postseason as of a few days ago. But they just got swept by the Astros. They're down a couple key players on both sides of the ball at this point, where they're in a similar spot. For them, it's absolute must win, and they certainly have more at stake this particular season than the Marlins do. So we will see how that goes. A reminder that old friend Skip Schumacher works for the Rangers. He is a senior advisor in their front office this year. He did not hop right into another managerial job. He's widely expected to land one of these other managerial jobs during this upcoming offseason. But for now, he is with the Rangers. Who knows, if Bruce Bochy retires, then maybe he steps right in with Texas, depending on how that's gone. But he is behind the scenes with the Rangers this year as a senior advisor. So it is a reunion. I'll be fun to see if he finds his way on the field at one point during the games of this series and actually reconnects with some of his former players in person. We'll see if that actually happens at one point, because it's more of a front office role than any sort of coaching connection. But just to refresh people that Skip is still alive and still very passionate about what he does. And pretty soon, as soon as next year, they're going to have to go against him as a manager after being managed by him the previous couple of years.
This is going to be a pretty fun series because, Texas is closer than us. So they're going to be very motivated. So this is going to mean something here. My question to you guys is, where are you guys on Mazer? Because obviously young guy, we're going to get lefty heavy here pretty soon. It'll happen fast. But if we lose Cabrera, We're going to, Weathers, you're hoping he's going to be a rock, and then we know who's on the horizon. So I think we need some right-handers next year to really hold us down. Meyer, I don't know what we're going to get out of him. This is, to me, an important guy. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but where are we at on Mazur and what we think he can be for us?
Oh, you mentioned Max Meyer, and they have a lot in common, besides coincidentally going to the same high school and actually coming from the same part of Minnesota. As pitchers, I see a lot of the same strengths and flaws with them. With Mazur, when he's on, it's because his slider is nasty, and he's able to get enough swings and misses that way. But the rest of his pitch mix is kind of questionable. He has a deeper pitch mix than Max does, but really not a whole lot of places he could go to in terms of being able to get soft contact, where he's either missing bats or he's getting hit very hard. And in a lot of his starts this year, we've seen him get hit pretty hard. So there was that one exception. His most recent start was his best one, where I think he allowed 0 earned runs. He allowed 2 runs, but they were both of them like directly because of an error he made through 6 innings. He's I'm a little down on him based on the year he's had. He spent most of this year in AAA, and he didn't really earn his spot to come up. Like, he just had a really ordinary year down there where he throws strikes. It's just that he gives up a lot of hard contact in a way that I don't know exactly how he's going to get around it. The low-hanging fruit is that he is this incredibly skinny guy, and it feels like he could add a lot of good weight there, even in his mid-20s, in a way that would benefit him in some way. But ultimately, I just don't know if there's, unless his changeup takes a pretty big step forward, or unless there's something about his fastball shape that changes. He's just a really hittable fastball, and that comes down to kind of the same issue that Max Meyer has, where even the velocity looks all right, and even if he's getting into some good counts, if it's a fastball that major league hitters, even if you have success with it in the minors, when you get to the big leagues, guys are you need a lot of things to be working in your favor. And I think there's just not a whole, I don't really see a high ceiling there, where I think he's fine for a guy that could be at the very back of your rotation and you feel fine about it. But he's somebody that I'd say next year is going to be a very pivotal year in his whole career in order to become something more than he is right now. Because right now he's just a guy that, because of injuries, this kind of fell into his lap, and he'll have to prove a lot in 2026.
I forgot to mention Braxton Garrett too. I knew I was missing a lefty as another guy coming in next year. So I mean, I know we're not lefty heavy obviously right now, but I just looking forward, you can kind of see if you are able, and we know pitchers, like, it's hard to look too far in the future, but I mean, if you add Snelling and White somewhat early in the season, those guys are going to be playing consistently, and they're going to be basically the story of the year one way or the other, at least in terms of the pitching staff. So I don't know. I mean, if Cabrera goes down, we know we're going to have Sandy, who looks like he's back. Hopefully we don't trade him. I think we need him if we want any chance next year. And then Yuri. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who the next best right-hander is besides those two. I guess Junk, but who knows what we're gonna get out of him.
Right. A little bit further away, and the only guy that we'll be able to cover a few weeks from now when the season's over is Carson Milbrandt, who's a righty who had a very good year at high A and then got promoted to double A and did well at the end of the year. He's going to the Arizona Fall League, and I would think if things go well there, he might get invited to big league spring training. He's not realistically a candidate for the start of the year, but maybe by the middle of the season, Carson Milbrandt comes up. He's got a very good fastball. His strikeout numbers really took off this year. So I'm a fan of Milbrandt, but he's still, that's like a second half of the season type of guy, just because of his lack of upper minors experience. But further away, that's a guy.
I was going to say, he was an A+ this year, right? An A the whole time, right? So I know there was a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but he's a scout, and he does not work for the Marlins, but he loved Milbrandt before the season. That was his guy. He was always telling me about Milbrandt. He's like, this is the guy. I mean, obviously he liked White. He still believes in Meyer, but he was like, Milbrandt's the guy to watch. So yeah, if he could make that jump, that'd be huge. Definitely, the stuff seems to be there. You mentioned this interesting when you're talking about Mazur and Meyer and just the weight training, because didn't that article just come out of Baseball America where they were talking about how our organizational philosophy has been very focused on strength and conditioning and the player development. So those are two right there. Yuri to me looks awesome body wise. And Weathers is in better shape than he's been. So maybe those guys with a full off season of this. I know Myers rehabbing at the same time, but that could help them just put on some pounds.
Yeah. And now people that follow our platform very closely will remember reporting that the team itself never actually was willing to own up to. But we reported last summer that top draft pick PJ Morlando, he got hurt and missed so much last summer because of a weightlifting accident, a weightlifting competition during a rain delay during his first game. We're going to stand by that reporting. The way that, as you just referenced, that Baseball America feature that came out, that was very complimentary of the team and pointed to a lot of the positives about having these guys train as hard as they do. There are occasionally some risks that come along with that we have covered and people should keep in mind. So there's no perfect strategy in terms of how to develop guys, but it kind of, in hindsight, I think that only validates the story a little bit more, makes it seem a little bit more plausible that this team that is leaning so hard into the physicality aspect of it could, in some instances, push it a little bit too far. So
I don't know if our guy Crutch is meditating over there, if he just got frozen with his eyes closed. He looks like he's in deep thought, serene moment right there for our man Crutch. But I got to give a shout out to Adrian Lorenzo, ran international for the Marlins a couple of years ago and helped kind of build what's going on down there in the Dominican Republic. And I know he won't praise himself, but I got to give him some props. We did the El Big League show together, which if you're watching this show, you're a Marlins fan, want to learn more about Major League Baseball as a whole, Adrian is the best. I kind of just throw him pitches and he knocks them out. So does an awesome job on El Big League show. Again, big time experience with the Red Sox and the Marlins at the high levels. And he definitely knows his stuff. But one thing that he really helped set up was that Dominican situation where we talk about right-handers on the way. There are some big boys down there. DeFrank's getting a lot of press, but I've talked to people that everybody kind of has their own guy. You talk to different people and they all had their own fireballer. They're like, this guy's the guy's actually going to be the one. So there's a lot of good talent down there. Obviously they're not all going to get to the Miami Marlins potential trade bait. Some guys are going to flame out. You know how it goes, but that's deeper on the horizon, but that's there. I don't know. I'm feeling good. The vibes, you kind of killed with that Sandy, because now that you mentioned it, I do remember that when that was the playoff run. So that was a whole different kind of set of incentives and just pressures. And I don't know, maybe he was trying to pitch just because he wanted to be be part of that run. And he was going to just at least push it as far as it goes. And if it goes, it goes. He's getting the surgery anyways. I don't know what Eddie's situation is as far as why there's an urgency to throw, just to find out and then get the surgery while he has time to recover. I don't know. But other than that, which you just kind of killed the vibes on, I think the vibes are awesome. And, we only talked about Ramirez getting going, which he was playing pretty horribly for a minute. So I think to finish strong, to get over the certain milestones he wanted to get, just from a statistical standpoint, with the 20 home runs plus and all that, I don't know. I like that, gives me some optimism too. Where do you think, I'm putting you on the interview seat, but where do you think he ends up defensively? Do you just make him the youngest DH in the game and do it that way? I heard first base, I know it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not like he has a natural affinity to it, like a Hicks who played in college or played infield in college. So how do you see the Ramirez thing getting settled on defense?
I have people that have watched our shows. I have been very skeptical of his defense from the time that he arrived. Sticking as a catcher, I did not understand. I can actually pull it up pretty soon, that I said an over-under on how many games he would catch, and it was basically over-under 70 in his career, and he's about to hit 70 this season alone.
Oh, there we go. But it might be the end.
But the question, it's going to be, I think that's a good number, because I don't know if he'll ever catch again beyond this point, just given how many different areas he's still deficient in. When it comes to that, the team's been consistent about this. I don't totally agree, but we've seen it now several examples where his full focus in every single rep that he takes inside and outside games has been at catcher instead of trying another position. They did it with Xavier Edwards as a shortstop last year, and for a lot of this year, they're doing it with Connor Norby this entire year at third base, even though he's struggling there as well. And I personally, I find it confusing, because it's so valuable, even from a young age, to have guys learn defensive versatility and prepare for other positions. And they just do not want to do it. They want these guys to fully focus on sticking at a premium position. And if it doesn't work out, then they can like diversify their skill set.
Well, can I push back on the two infielders, because Edwards back to second base was quick, right? So that wasn't a hard transition back to second. And I don't know if Norby's different. He's not as athletic as Edwards. I don't know if he would have a harder transition going back to second from third.
I mean, if you think about it this way, Norby is one of the worst defensive third basemen in baseball. Yesterday, he makes an error on the first play of the game. They have a perfect opportunity, and ask Clayton off the record. They have a perfect opportunity with Xavier Edwards on the IL, or on the ghost IL until he returns from his wrist injury, to try and back at second base with Graham Pauley also back off the IL to put your best defender at third base. Miami's not going to make the postseason, but they are mathematically still in it. And they should be trying to win every single game as possible, and they're not putting their best men in the best positions right now. So they are the thing that they're worried about the most with Ramirez, with Norby, is having them be the most valuable asset they can possibly be. And for Ramirez, that's if he can catch, given the lack of catching in Major League Baseball. And with Norby, he is more valuable if he can play third base. To me, I personally don't know why they care so much about that. Right? It just doesn't make much sense to me, especially when they're showing how much they can't do it. But that is just the explanation that I've got. He is way more valuable as a catcher than as DH, obviously, and Norby. I really don't understand why they didn't try him at second base. They've had the opportunity now with X out. Now's the perfect time. But they're having Javier Sanoa play second base instead, who can also play third base or anywhere else in the infield or anywhere else in the outfield. So it's not like they need to get Sanoa in there and he has to play second base. He can play anywhere. Troy Johnson doesn't need to be in the lineup, for example. But here we are.
Is he good on, like, because Norby's come back from injury? You think that factors in the fact that, hey, he's been playing third base all year. He's coming back from injury. We don't want to just throw him out there and do it that way.
They could have done this in Jacksonville. They could have had him play second base down there. But that is a good point. I wonder what happens in spring training. It's going to be really fascinating spring training because there will be too many infielders, too many outfielders. And what Clayton said to me today was that it's a great problem to have. You have three guys that can play third base for you next year in Costa, Pauly, and Norby. So it's going to be a lot of competition.
What about Arquette?
Arquette?
Yeah, he's got a hit. He's got some hitting to do in the minors first. But by all-star break, like basically, when you saw these other guys come up, did that happen? The other college hitters last year?
It's not fair, but just given this team's history of their top picks and how quickly, especially their college bats in previous years, they pulled Socher, would speed through the minors and be impact guys right away. It hasn't happened. So even though this is a different administration and a different sort of player, I don't want to put that kind of expectations on him. Even though it is a possibility, it's fair to say that he's a guy that potentially could be in that mix relatively soon. I wouldn't count on. I don't want him to have any sort of specific expectations for 2026.
Cam Smith spoiled us because I remember. I'm a Hurricane baseball fan as well. I remember seeing Nick Kurtz and Cam Smith and all those guys the year before, and then like literally the next year. I mean, Cam Smith was opening day, and in Kurtz, you see what he's done. It's like. And Caglione, another one that played Miami. I mean, I remember seeing those guys at the light, and the next year, I think I saw all three of them actually at Lone Depot, like literally year to year. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. I don't know Arquette tore it up enough in this little. I mean, this is so. Do you read that much into these kind of half seasons for these college kids, or do you wait more for next year?
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. In fact, I was more impressed with his defense this year than his hitting overall. I was surprised by how decent he looked at shortstop. Without being too rude, he has a very weird body. Speaking of like the emphasis that this organization is putting on that physicality, he's a guy that could afford to put on a lot of weight, especially on his legs as well. It is a weird sort of frame, but it works for him. And
State basketball player,
right? I've seen some of the highlights from when he was a basketball player too. He's an interesting guy, but I feel like he's still a little while away from being the best version of himself compared to Cam Smith, for example.
Yeah, you're right. I'm trying to push it too fast, but man, it'd be nice to have a third base. I mean, Grant Pauley looks the part at third base, so that one looks right. Man, it'd be nice to have an Arquette somewhere in that mix by some point next year. I don't want to be too aggressive, but if we're dreaming about next season, how it could go, that's as we talk about Norby being a second base and playing third all year. That's where my brain goes. And I'll look shortstop too. Who knows what happens? Otto Lopez, we got real excited there for a second when he was in the middle of the year. I think he's come back down to earth a little bit, but still a solid
Yeah.
option there, but
No,
nothing that you
all things considered, he's still a solid shortstop. I mean, it looks legit, even if the ceiling is not super duper high for him as an overall player, he's a guy that you can that's a nice guy to have in place. And then if you develop a true transcendent talent to surpass him, then even better. But what Otto has done now in his second year has been exceeded any reasonable expectations. That's a guy that is really helping them win.
Eli, how old are you?
32.
You're
All right.
32, Eli? What the? Holy shit. Okay, cool.
So I'm pulling up, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be right, that the Edwards and Otto Lopez combined WAR, and you compare it to Alex Gonzalez and Luis Castillo combined WAR when we won the championship. I'm not making a direct comparison. They just kind of look alike, right? Because of just the switch and the running, and then Gonzalez being a right-hander and just kind of being a kind of strong, shorter guy. I'm pretty sure that if you combine Edwards and Lopez's WAR this season, it's way more than Gonzalez and Castillo. Not as good defensively, maybe, just overall, because they were so spectacular on that side, but I bet it's probably higher.
It's in the same neighborhood. Yeah. With X, he kind of ran into that slump right before he got hurt, and then getting hurt kind of takes away from that. But yeah, Otto as a whole, he's pretty close to. We've really
They're like 6+ combined. I don't think Castillo and Gonzalez were 6+ WAR combined.
It's good. You can look this up easily. I would if I were.
Let's see. I'm sorry for hijacking the show. I'm just curious. So Gonzalez in 03 was 1.3. This is Baseball Reference. And Luis Castillo, recent Hall of Famer, or what was it? Let's see. What was that? He was in 2003. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm hijacking the show because it's directing me to our boy that we traded. So Luis Castillo and the other Luis Castillo in 2003, 4.4 WAR. So pretty similar, I think. That's like right on the button. I think they might be equal.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Fair enough. No.
I'll very quickly show the people what you're referring to. From
sorry, I did take it on. I was on Buffalo's. Now I'm on 2003 WAR stats. But I'm just saying because like visually, they look similar. Like because of the Castillo and Edwards, they just have similarities in their profile. Castillo, a more talented version, and Gonzalez just like they have similar builds, similar handedness to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not to I have to go soon, but another middle infield WAR comparison I'd be interested in is 2015 Echeverria and D. Gordon, because like they have to be up there. That's the year that Gordon won the batting title. Echeverria had his best season offensively. I thought it was 2014, but no, I looked back. It was 2015 where he hit really well, and he obviously did what he usually does defensively. I think that's another good comp for Miami's middle infield.
Yeah, 2.6 for Echeverria that year. Good call.
That was Echeverria's best season, man. And then D. Gordon, what was he?
4.4.
Yeah, that was Miami's best middle infield. Don't at me.
Yeah, that's good. That was a good one. Yeah, man. And now there was some extra circumstances going on there, but potentially. But
yeah.
It was fun to watch. That's for sure. I mean, look at this roster, man. It's amazing. Between those guys, and then Prado had a good year too that year, 3.4. Maybe Prado is like a best case scenario for Norby. I don't see that kind of athleticism. I don't see that kind of. I don't see that talent level.
On either side of the ball, Prado's hit tool was just so special with the Braves, and like that first year with the Marlins, that Norby, he just has his at bats yesterday. He had a better day yesterday than he did on Tuesday in his first game back. And let's remember he's just coming back off the IL. But I really, all the things that worried us in his really 2 months in 2024, where he took the world on fire, sort of coming up to surface level, showing us that there's a little bit of downside with the bat, unfortunately. But he's still young, and there is upside with the power at least. But we shall see.
Man, you with this 2015, man, I do not remember just how bad this starting lineup was, or the starting rotation was. Holy moly, man. Ugh.
Yeah.
Tom Kohler was holding it down. Man, this was rough. We had Brad Hand before he became an all-star in the pen. This was sorry for hijacking the show again, but man, it's so amazing looking back on this when you look at some of the names and how good they're still playing between Ozuna, Yelich, and Stanton, and Real Muto, obviously. What's cool memory lane. It's September 18th when we're pulling out 2015 stuff, but we're still in the hunt.
Yeah, there's that pitching staff for you right there.
Oh my goodness.
On the position, as you referenced, on the hitting side, some of those guys are still around and still good big leaguers. Whereas on the pitching side, all these guys are long gone. They are playing golf with Isaac at this point.
That Jared Kosar trade, we don't talk about that trade enough as one of the worst trades we made, I got to say. Jared Kosar, what did we give up for him? I know we gave up Kike Hernandez.
That must have been Colin Moran in that deal as well.
Marisnik and those. Actually, you know what? Those guys ended up being the guy that ended up being the best player was Kike,
Right.
Who was the least talked about guy in that trade.
It's true.
Yeah, we spoke about him in the dugout with Clayton and Kelly Sacco and Miami's radio due to Puerto Rican Heritage Night at Lone Depot Park, and we were asked who has the most career home runs for Puerto Rican born players, and then we asked who has the most postseason home runs, and we landed on Beltran, right? But I think Kike Hernandez may have more postseason home runs than Carlos Beltran, which was like, geez, man, like Carlos, like. That guy just hit. He was in the postseason every year, Enrique Hernandez. So he had a lot of opportunities to go yard.
That's insane. Have you guys made the Sanoja Kike Hernandez comparison yet?
I wish there was more power.
Dude, he's hitting it. He's not that. I mean, how old is he? He's 22.
Sanoja, he just turned 23, but it's not like he's getting any taller. It's a really small frame.
But so. Kike Hernandez, what was his power level at that age? Because he was good already at that age. He was younger than I thought when he broke out.
Yeah, that's fair. The thing is with Sanoja, when he was coming up in the Marlins system, there were all these obnoxious comparisons to Altuve just because of how short he was, and just because they're both Venezuelan, and just because he was so young when he reached the majors, just like Altuve was. And Altuve is a guy that in the middle of his career suddenly became an above-average power hitter. But those are the exceptions, not the norm. Guys like Altuve and even Kike to a certain extent, he was he became so much better of a player than anybody could have reasonably thought when he was a prospect. People didn't see him as a guy that would have a decade-long big league career. So even though those are examples, I don't want to put expectations like that on particular guys. That's a best case scenario. It'll be
5 home runs
around a while, but I don't think the power element is gonna come along all that much if I had to guess.
Age 22 season for Sanoja. I think Kike was the same age when he came out. He hit the minors with the Marlins, and then we traded him. He had a good year that year. He had 1.6 WAR that year, so he actually had a really good first year. Sanoja, they got him at 1.3. I'm using ESPN here. 5 home runs for Sanoja. For Kike, we got 3 total home runs. Kike had a better slug, and just a better overall OPS, but had some ups and downs at times, and then. We know what he's done since, but I don't know. I mean, he has more power than I thought. Sanoja, like if you're comparing how I think about him now, power wise, to how I thought about him, a year and a half ago when he was really making waves. I mean, I wouldn't have thought he had 5 home runs like he's hit, and some good ones.
You say 5 home runs like it's a big number.
I mean, for a 22-year-old, just utility dude, I mean. I didn't think he would be hitting it as hard. I don't know the stat cast on him, but I thought it was going to be, like Edwards, quite frankly. I didn't think he was going to have any kind of pop whatsoever. How tall is he? I mean, he's a small dude. He's the guy with 5'7". I don't know. I would be shocked. So let's see Kike. So Kike didn't hit double-digit home runs until his 5th year. And then eventually became a guy that had a couple 20 home run seasons. I'm just saying this guy has made some nice contact this year, and obviously we know he's going to get the bat to the ball, but he's hit it. I'd love to see the stat cast. You're laughing. You don't think there it is right there. Put it in the chat. But I don't know. You don't think is he showing more power than you expected? Let's put it that way.
It's a tiny bit more because I did not think there'd be any homers to the opposite field, and he's had at least one of those this year. I remember it must have been somewhere right in the very middle of the year where he hit an oppo at Lone Depot in a way that I didn't think he was capable of that particular one. But he's a guy that I had seen him in the minors where if he pulls the ball in the areas just enough to get it over the wall, all things considered, it's been kind of what I thought. He's actually been better defensively than I thought he would be, just because they've asked him to play every single position, including pitcher, but every other single position as well. I didn't think he'd be as plus a defender. If you want me to go into my Snoha analysis, the one thing that I was expecting more of him is as a base runner. He's not a good base runner at this stage of his career. People stereotype him as this speedy, tiny guy and just assume that somebody like that is going to be effective as a base runner. And he doesn't steal very often, and he doesn't get good reads off of pitchers. In the minors, he was the guy that put up big stolen base totals, but was also inefficient. And I could tell he was just a little raw from that aspect. So this is one area where you kind of, in your mind, you assume he's a guy that'll be useful running late in games. And that hasn't been the case this year. He hasn't really helped them win games in that situation. And I think there's the potential for him to get better at that going in next year and beyond.
I like that. He's airmailed some throws too. That I don't know if he's overcompensating or what, but I've been there for a few that he has just sent sailing, particularly when he's played shortstop. But I like him. Again, maybe I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek with the Kike Hernandez comparison, but if you look at them age to age, there are some similarities in terms of just their performance. And I don't know. I feel better about him as a hitter than I thought I would, especially when he first came up and he was swinging and missing a lot. You're like, was he just going to be overwhelmed by these guys? But I think his adjustment that he's made since that first, I don't know. You remember his first month? It was like hard to watch when he first came up.
I was not convinced he was going to stick on this roster for the entire season the way he has. He's one of the few guys on this roster that's been healthy and has also not been demoted at any point. And that in itself has exceeded my expectations. Yeah.
And I think he can get better is what I'm saying. If he can put the bat on the ball, he's shown some flashes there with being able to drive it a little bit. And he just looks, seeing him in person, he doesn't look like a bum. He looks pretty explosive. I like the way he looks. That's one of my hidden kind of happy things about this season is that Sanoha looks like he'll be at least one of those guys that you can keep around and he can help you win games. And I mean, it's controllable for quite a while. So he's going to be, we'll look back at his WAR and just his overall contribution and be like, this guy helped us win some games. So I'm the one man Sanoha fan base. I have a couple friends, scouts, and Adrian uses this phrase too. They say, CLP, cute little player. But I know I like this guy. I hope we don't trade him for some middling starter like Cosart who pouts and does nothing.
That's true. That's true. All right, we got one final segment to get to right here. For anybody that's somehow still sticking around with us at this point, it is prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this year.
Bruce has been on it. There was a chunk of the last month or so where people were laughing at him the other way around. But at this point, 11 wins ahead of last year already, with still 9 games left to go. All season long, we've been keeping track of people's predictions on Prediction Time. Our staffers, our live stream guests, and our valued super subs, they predict how many games the Marlins are going to win, who's going to be the series MVP. 3 series left to go. Our own staffer, Hector Rodriguez, he has 2 points up in first place at this point. I am nowhere to be seen, well below the cutoff here. I'm mathematically eliminated, but still some people alive as we head into these final 3 series. This Rangers won a 3-game set. I'm going to get the music ready. I got to get my background set up as well. It's just going to be Danny and I on this one, and we'll add everybody else's later. So I laid it out, Danny. Now, this is your first time on here, but you're just going to tell me how many games the Marlins are going to win, who's going to be the series MVP. Could be from either team, could be a hitter or a pitcher. And just give us a little explanation in terms of why you're leaning that way. All right.
We're going for the Ranger series?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for the Ranger series, let's see. I like us taking 2 out of 3. I think we're rolling. I'm not going to turn around the vibes. The vibes are there, so I'm going to keep him going. I think definitely Yuri Perez going to have a statement start here as he is rounding back into form. So I got the series MVP is going to be Yuri Perez, just for how I predict a dominant start, something like 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, really, really getting his momentum back. And at the plate, let's go with a big hit by Sanoha, since I was just hyping him up too. But yeah, it's 2 out of 3, and series MVP Yuri. I think I got all the predictions on there. Well, if I miss one, let me know. I'll fill it in. But that's what I'm going with. I'm I'm riding the vibes, man. I wish I could give you more analysis other than I'm feeling good. The Texans is going to be charged up. They're in the race. They got a chance to really make a push here. So you're going to see the best Texas Rangers. But I think Miami's going to feel that energy. They're going to ride with it. And they got nothing to lose. They're still playing hard ball, competitive ball. So I like our momentum. I think we take 2 out of 3.
All righty. And I've laid out the playoff scenarios. Realistically, Marlins need a lot of help, and they need to win almost all of their games. Maybe one loss down the stretch, and they can still hang on to a dream, a little chance of them getting in. So I'll say that they have that one loss in this series, but do win 2 out of 3, taking yet another series and playing generally good ball as we head on down the stretch. For series MVP, for whatever reason, I have not been willing to lean into him, but Jacob Marcy has been so consistently good. He won series MVP in Colorado, and I think he's going to do it again and just be valuable enough in that lineup enough to make the difference as they keep their hopes alive heading into what will be the final week of the season. And another step in the right direction for this Marlins team as we head to the end of 2025. That has been one of the longest streams we've done this year, and we probably could have chopped that up into 2 and given people exactly what they wanted. But Danny, you had a whole lot on your minds. And
no, man, I'm never on the show, so I'm having fun. I love this, man. I do podcasts all day just on the Canes. Really, in the meantime, I'm checking, what's up with the Sky Carps. So it's fun for me to be on here. I'm sorry if I talked a lot, but yeah, man, I was charged up.
And you'll catch him on El Big League Show. When's the next episode of that? Because I always catch it after the fact. I'm never.
Yeah, we recorded a bunch, so I think the next couple episodes are going to be more interviews. We talked to Laz Gutierrez, who is the pitching coach for the Miami Hurricanes. Wasn't really just talking about hurricane stuff. It was more about just he does a lot of mental skills training and just big picture items like that. Also talked to Brian Abraham, who is the director of player development for the Boston Red Sox. I want to make sure I get the exact title right, but he's the player development guy for the Red Sox. Obviously, I mean, he's top of the chain there. So big time baseball. Really interested to hear his thoughts, and I'm trying to think of something he said that was real interesting. But really, he was another one that you're talking about Boston Red Sox, top of the food chain. He was talking a lot about physicality as well, not just scouting it, but developing it with the players that he has. And he gave me some little league dad coaching advice. Every little league dad says to swing at anything close on a 3-2 count to your kids. And he's saying, don't give that bad advice at the little league level, because with to fix their swing decisions by the time they get out here. So swing at strikes is his MO, but it was an awesome conversation. That was a long one too. So if you want to get into the mind of a big league caliber player development dude, that's a great one, Brian Abraham. So I'm not sure which one's going to drop first, but we'll be dropping those interviews over the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. I'll be checking it out. And we got to have you back in the future for sure, because you were a great guest on this one. Eli Sussman, Danny Enriquez, we had Isaac Azud in the middle, Alex Krutchik. Fish on First Live will be back after the end of the next series. Get our merch at aboutthefans.com and save 10% with the promo code FOF10 if you want hat like mine, t-shirts, polos, stickers, and other accessories, repping our brands and also repping the Marlins themselves and other player-based designs that we have out there. So thanks a lot for the support, and go Fish.
Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.